Coming up on Network Africa, 25 people electrocuted in the Democratic Republic of Congo after a power cable collapses at the Kinshasa market. All is now under control in Guinea Bissau, as the president says he survived a coup attempt, being under heavy gunfire for 5 hours. Plus, nearly 800 schools in Mozambique destroyed by last week's tropical storm Anna. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where at least 25 people have been killed after they were electrocuted by a falling power cable at a market in Kinshasa. Police say the high voltage cable snapped and fell on houses and people shopping near the capital on Wednesday. All footage posted to social media appeared to show the aftermath of the incident, with several motionless bodies in puddles of water. It is not yet clear what caused the power cable to break, but police say the collapse happened at the Matadi-Kibala district on the outskirts of Kinshasa, and that a lot of people died on the spot. Well, 3 people have been arrested in the Brazilian city of Rio de Janeiro over the murder of a Congolese migrant, a killing that was captured on video and caused public outrage. Relatives of Moise Kabangame says he was attacked at a beach kiosk after asking his manager to pay overdue wages to him. Footage released by police shows him being repeatedly beaten by 4 men with clubs and a baseball bat. The aggressions were set to continue even as Kabangame laid motionless on the ground. Kabangame and his family arrived in Brazil in 2011 with his 3 siblings fleeing the armed conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is appealing to all parties in Ethiopia for an immediate cessation of hostilities. Speaking to reporters, Mr. Guterres said the people of Ethiopia continue to suffer greatly from ongoing conflict and bloodshed. The UN chief stressed that a cessation could allow for effective humanitarian access and relief to all affected populations throughout the country.
The people of Ethiopia continue to suffer greatly from ongoing conflict and bloodshed. For millennia, the tradition of the Olympic truce has called on all parties everywhere to stop hostilities throughout the course of the Games. As I prepare to leave for the Winter Olympics, I make the strongest possible appeal for all parties in Ethiopia for an immediate cessation of hostilities. And this can allow for effective humanitarian access and relief to all affected populations throughout Ethiopia. And these actions will help pave the way to a much-needed inclusive national dialogue involving all Ethiopians. I reiterate my appeal to all parties to follow the finest tradition of the Olympic spirit to save lives, overcome differences, and find the path to real peace.
In the meantime, UNICEF's representative in Ethiopia says children and their families living in Ethiopia's lowland regions of Afar, Oromia, and the Somali regions are struggling to survive from a severe drought, which is drying up water wells and killing their livestock and crops. Gianfranco Rotigiano says this is pushing hundreds of thousands of children and their families to the brink. Due to 3 consecutive failed raining seasons, the country requires urgent humanitarian assistance.
It is a drought that is affecting almost 7 million people on their livelihood, on food security. And it is something which is already pretty advanced and bad, but that could worsen dramatically if the next rainy season, which is due in April, after mid-April, would not come in the way it should come. There is a need to improve the status of the health center, the centers, the nutrition centers, where the severely acute malnourished children can be admitted and treated correctly. And all of that is something that should be done within the next 2-3 weeks. The rate of acute malnutrition is already at 20%, which is well above the rate that we have in global emergencies, which is estimated to 15%. We have animals dying at an impressive rate, which is increasing every month. And death of animal means lack of food for children, for families, lack of money, of course, to buy food, lack of milk, and that is definitely something which is already happening. And the population is moving already from the lowlands to the highlands, displacing themselves, leaving behind the small children that could not travel with relatives, and coming up with children that are 11 or 12 and above that dropped off of school. So we estimate already more than 155,000 children out of school.
Mauritius has issued a Class 4 warning, the highest weather alert, because a cyclone is approaching the Indian Ocean island. Batsirai has also been upgraded to an intense tropical cyclone to reflect its strength. The weather is expected to deteriorate further, with rainfall over the whole island. The cyclone is expected to pass at its closest point at 4 p.m. local time from Grand Bay, that's a tourist resort in the northern region. Waves of up to 10 meters expected along the coastal roads in the southwest. The strongest gust recorded so far has been 151 kilometers per hour at Shams de Mar in the capital, Port Louis. Nearly 800 schools in Mozambique have been destroyed by last week's tropical storm Anna. The country's education ministry says tents are now being erected to serve as temporary classrooms for the 300,000 students and 4,700 teachers that have been affected. Storm Anna hit southern Africa last week, killing more than 80 people and making tens of thousands homeless. The region is now bracing itself for a second storm, Storm Batsirai, that's expected to hit the region later this week. Well, the president of Guinea Bissau says he has survived a coup attempt after being under heavy gunfire for 5 hours on Tuesday. Umaro Sisiko Embalo said the attackers tried to kill him and his entire cabinet at the government palace. He adds that many others had been killed in the fighting on both sides, but he did not know the exact numbers. Providing little details, President Embalo also said the attackers are linked to drug trafficking in the country. Gunfire erupted near government buildings on Tuesday in the capital of the West African nation, where the president was attending the cabinet meeting. Well, the attempted coup in Guinea-Bissau could be a clear sign that an era once dreaded could be making a comeback. African regional and continental blocs have for years harped on the importance and advantages of democratic governors. But for countries that have experienced coups over the last 3 years, any semblance of democratic governance is hanging by a thread. Well, joining us now for more on this is Victor Ariole, African Affairs Analyst. Thank you so much for joining us on the program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let me begin with this direct question. Why are military takeovers on the rise in Africa?
Well, it will be seen as poverty driven, because a majority of the people who really voted them in, or who were expected to be the ones who voted them in, seem not to be satisfied with activities going on and how they are governing the nations they were supposed to govern, with some level of humanistic endeavor, which is part of what African peer review mechanism ought to really have been looking out for. Because when you decide there should be democracy, which means the governance by the people, for the people, and a majority people really voting you in to be their leader, there is need for you certainly to be very mindful of not hurting them. But this case around, we used to know that particular region that is noted as evil axis some time ago, by the West, and some people in the West note those areas evil axis. That the Western Sudan to Sudan area, and Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad are known as Western Sudan, or French Sudan, if for the English people. And it seems to be an axis that is very, very notorious in terms of how the Sahel region has affected their livelihood and whatever.
Insecurity.
And, it doesn't really mean that they are completely out of resources, or they are weak in resources, because it's still a zone that controls about a great number of mining sites where people are picking golds in the white people, of course, whether China, whether British or France or America, they have gold mines around here. Even uranium mine, we have them around those areas, and they are doing very well in picking them. So why should the people there find themselves in poverty? And why is it that they are blaming Libya in terms of arms that come from Libya penetrating those areas and creating problems? These are things that ECOWAS is supposed to be mindful of and bridge their boundary. Because the ECOWAS boundary, really, if they had worked hard, their boundary would have been within the Sahel area, not the internal boundary we are having among ourselves and creating problems among ourselves. ECOWAS should rise up and acknowledge that their military boundary, which is sovereignty of ECOWAS, should be within the Sahel region. Minding what goes on between Algeria and Mali, between Libya and Chad, or between Libya and Burkina Faso, so that there will be some semblance of non-interference in ECOWAS affairs.
So
and they are not doing it.
No, you've mentioned ECOWAS, and there have been calls really for ECOWAS to rise up. So what would you say, what else should ECOWAS really do in rising up to put an end to these? There's been sanctions, there's been suspensions.
The sanction problem, you can only sanction people who are really within the internal space of ECOWAS, not that are not having borders with other people or other countries that are not ECOWAS. Mali has a boundary with Mauritania that has decided not to be ECOWAS again. It has boundary with Algeria, it has boundary with Morocco. So within those areas, they can infiltrate and do whatever they want, and the sanctions will not completely have effect, because those people are sympathetic to them also. Whatever it is, they have some people who are creating problems within the Maghreb region who will be sympathetic with them, just like we know China and Russia is not willing to impose any sanction on Mali or Guinea, because Russia and China, two of the main powers in the United Nations, are interested in what goes on in that place, and they want to take over in effect. So whatever be the case, they will be interested in such confusion or cacophony, so that their interests also will be protected. They know what they are looking for in those areas. And unfortunately, Africans don't learn history. 1960 at independence, these people were also allied to Russia. Amilcar Cabral in Guinea-Bissau, with his African Party for the independence of Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau, were aligned to Russia. Yeah. The same thing in Mali, Modibo Keita was also aligned to Russia. The same way somebody in Burkina Faso was also, Sankara was once, everybody knows about Sankara.
So it seems, you know, these international powers are the ones...
Yeah, they are definitely interested in what goes on there because they know what they are looking for.
Right,
and Africa should wake up to its responsibility of safeguarding its people.
We'd have to leave it.
They have to wake up.
We'd have to leave it there because of time. But thank you so much, Victor Ariole. Thank you so much for joining us on our program. Still ahead on the program. Rediscovering a forgotten language, Egypt's Nubians are turning to singing to learn their language. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. South Africa's power utility, Eskom, has announced that it will introduce stage 2 load shedding as from Wednesday, 2nd of February until Monday, the 7th of February at 5 a.m.
The country's power supply.
Eskom says boiler tube leaks and unit trips at some of its generating units are contributing to power supply constraints. Total breakdowns amount to 14,994 megawatts, the power utility added. Well, the state-run utility has not implemented load shedding for about a month and has appealed to citizens to help avoid the implementation of load shedding by reducing the usage of electricity and to switch off non-essential items. WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus says it is premature for any country to declare victory against the COVID-19 virus, which he says is still dangerous and continues to evolve. At a press conference in Geneva, Dr. Tedros says the Omicron variant, which was first identified just 10 weeks ago, well, almost 90 million cases have now been reported to the WHO.
Since Omicron was first identified just 10 weeks ago, almost 90 million cases have been reported to WHO, more than were reported in the whole of 2020. We're now starting to see a very worrying increase in deaths in most regions of the world. We're concerned that a narrative has taken hold in some countries that because of vaccines and because of Omicron's high transmissibility and lower severity, preventing transmission is no longer possible and no longer necessary. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's premature for any country either to surrender or to declare victory. This virus is dangerous, and it continues to evolve before our very eyes. WHO is currently tracking 4 sublineages of the Omicron variant of concern, including BA.2. This virus will continue to evolve, which is why we call on countries to continue testing, surveillance, and sequencing. We can't fight this virus if we don't know what it's doing. And we must continue to work to ensure all people have access to vaccines.
Bars and nightclubs have reopened nearly 2 years after the Ugandan government shut them and banned other forms of entertainment as part of strict measures to contain COVID-19. While business owners are now excited as they can bounce back to normal.
Throngs of revelers filled the Levels bar in Kampala's capital, dancing to live music and ordering both service to their tables. It was a Monday night.
Now that we've started entertainment, after 2 years of no entertainment, I feel so excited that at least we're getting back to work. Because times have been hard. You know, when you work at home, first of all, you have no food at home, your wife is making noise, the landlord is making noise, the car is making noise, everything is not in the right place. But when you start working, things are better. So I'm so excited and I'm happy that we're back to our normal business.
Of course, Uganda, it's life of the party. If you don't party in Uganda, you're not a Ugandan.
We are home, we are partying, we are back to work, we are working. End of month, get your money, get your salary, put the money into circulation. That's it, that's Uganda. We live like it's just living.
The East African country has one of the world's youngest population. Kampala is well known regionally for offering a fun night out. That is finally possible again, nearly 2 years after the government shut down bars and nightclubs and banned outdoor musical performances and other entertainment activities, part of strict measures induced by COVID-19. Raymond Karimera, head of marketing at Nomad Bar and Grill in the Kampala suburb of Kabalagala, known locally as Sin City, said many bars struggled to avoid bankruptcy as they continued to pay expenses such as security and electricity, even as they were unable to open to customers.
It was horrible for us. We incurred so much losses in terms of equipment. Naturally, you know how equipment is. The more something doesn't work, the easier it dies. We lost a few speakers, furniture, you know, you have to pack it together, termites, everything, broken chairs. The bar is not even working. You wonder how are things breaking here and there. But we lost a lot. Actually, we have a storage of just spoiled equipment, spoiled furniture.
What's this?
Citing rising vaccination rates, President Yoweri Museveni announced on December the 31st that bars and nightclubs would be allowed to reopen in January, 2 weeks after pre-primary, primary and secondary schools resumed on January the 10th. The closure of schools was the longest disruption of educational institutions globally due to the coronavirus pandemic, according to the United Nations.
Nubians in Cairo and the southern city of Aswan are using songs to teach and spread what is left of their mother language, spoken by their ancestors who belonged to an ethnic minority who lived in Egypt's south for thousands of years.
Growing up in the southern city of Aswan, the heart of where her ancestors lived for thousands of years, 28-year-old Nubian Egyptian Jihad Ashraf could only speak 5 words in a mother language. Like thousands of youth in our generation, Ashraf did not learn to speak Nubian for fear of exclusion or bullying. But when she moved to Cairo a few years ago to get a master's degree in law, she decided to learn it.
We all have this passion. We all want to learn our language. We're all worried about the fact that our language is getting extinct, unfortunately. The new generations aged 13, 14 and younger don't speak the language. I have my dreams. Me and all my colleagues in the initiative dream of spreading the Nubian alphabet. We hope that all Nubians in Egypt and Sudan learn writing Nubian so that they can document their language before it disappears completely.
After finishing a course with our tutor, Kareya Musa, Ashraf, along with a number of her colleagues, founded the No Big Koro initiative to spread the Nubian language through song. They gather each week to study the lyrics of certain Nubian song and then sing it to learn the language. They say they welcome both Nubians and non-Nubians to join.
When we were displaced in the 1960s, I witnessed it all. I remember the ships that carried us, and then we were relocated to the new Nubia. I went to school there. In the beginning, we preserved our language. But when we went to school, our parents were worried that speaking Nubian might prevent us from excelling at school. So they prevented us from speaking in Nubian. This was the start of the disappearance of the language.
In Aswan, 72-year-old Nubian former tour guide Mohammed Subi sits with young children in a museum he built where he teaches them the language by singing famous Nubian songs.
When we went to school, we used to speak Arabic like the foreigners, so we were bullied by non-Nubians. This made me shy, I was good at mathematics, but I never participated in class because I was scared I would speak Arabic the wrong way and everyone would laugh. This pushed me not to let my children learn Nubian since they were young so that they don't face the difficulties I faced at school.
Now, only a handful of old Nubians speak the language, which for long was thought not to have an alphabet. But Musa says some Nubian researchers managed to find rare manuscripts of the ancient writing.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.